What's the weirdest thing a guest has done at your house? My sister, her husband, and their 3 kids lived with me for about 2 to 3 months when they got evicted. Neither of them worked, so I was the only one supporting my family, single mom and 2 sons, and their family of 5. They didn't cook, clean, or anything. I'm positive they didn't look for a job or another place to live the entire time. I had saved all year to go on a cruise with my best friend. And I didn't want to miss it. So I sent my sons to stay with their grandparents and left my sister's family alone in my house for the week. When I got home, there was no food left. She had rearranged all of my furniture in my house, including moving my sons into the same room so she could give her girls the other room, and she took everything out of my kitchen cabinets and put it all back elsewhere. She said that my organization just didn't make sense. I told her that the fact that I paid the mortgage gave me the right to organize with the nonsensical mind of the Mad Hatter if that's what I wanted. I then told her that I was going to bed, and when I woke up, her family and all her crap had better be out of my house. It took me an entire week to put my house back the way I had it. Dude stayed at my house for a few months. And when he finally left, he was basically a career couch surfer. He left behind dozens of bottles of urine in the guest room. The guest room with an attached bathroom. I'd known this guy for years. And he just up and leaves me a room full of piss bottles. Stolen a sofa cushion when they came to visit for my sister's wedding. There were so many guests visiting that we didn't even realize a cushion was missing until way later. One of my dad's high school friends stayed on our couch after a night of drinking with my parents. Usually a non-smoking house. Lit up a joint and put it out in our carpet. I was at a friend's house once during a long trip, and suddenly everyone at the small gathering started to shoot up heroin. My friend and I were traveling together. He was in recovery and felt uncomfortable, and I've never done heroin, so yes, I was quite uncomfortable as well. I didn't know it was going to become that kind of party. It was also 30 degrees outside, so everyone was smoking cigarettes while nodding out and throwing up in the only bathroom. This was a very nice house in a rich neighborhood, and his parents were successful doctors. Although weed wasn't legal back then, it is now. And it's always been pretty well looked upon as a harmless drug. Mind you, I was one of only 2 people who did not actively have a needle in their arm. And I sparked up a joint. Cue the complete mayhem. Mayhem. His mom came thundering downstairs out of a deep slumber to rage at the one person who was smoking weed while ignoring the 10 other people at the party throwing up in a bucket and blacking out on the floor. It turns out that marijuana is not viewed as permissible in that household. And I was kicked outside to smoke in the cold, while everyone was disgusted by my behavior. The guy we hired to paint our house scrubbed our stove impeccably clean. That stove was shining like the day we bought it. I have no idea why. He did not clean anything else. Just the stove. Rearrange the furniture. We thought we were kind enough to let them crash at our place for a few days while they found themselves a place to stay. Next thing I know, they started rearranging our furniture and dictating how we should live in our own home. Although I was a kid, it still sat wrong with me on so many levels. Tried to hide the fact they didn't like their spaghetti bolognese by scraping it into a vase. Bet me they could jump from our porch to a big-ass tree about 10 feet from our porch. They weren't drunk or high. Just stupid and competitive. I said go for it. But I'm not betting them any actual money. They jumped, slammed into the trunk and bounced off. Landed on their back and they were completely fine. If a little stunned. Came back up to the party with sap on their shirt and went about doing normal shit like nothing had happened. Guy installing hardwood floors when I was like 9 used our family computer to look at porn. Which he saved images of and just, left them in the My Documents folder. This was probably in 1999 or 2000. I once dated a woman who claimed her spirit cat would take over her body and that her eyes would turn into cat eyes. It never happened, but one day she shit in my cat's litter box and said it was her spirit cat. Needless to say, I didn't call her again. When I was growing up, one of my friends used to steal our remote controls every time he came over. TV, stereo, VCR, DVD player. He always denied it, but they would disappear after he had been over. My parents eventually banned him from our house. Years later when we moved we found all of the remotes in the bottom of the couch where they had fallen through a hole we didn't know existed. A friend brought his neighbor to a party at my house once. I walked into the bathroom to find him pissing on my girlfriend of the time's underwear in the sink whilst muttering about her being a dirty slut. When confronted, he claimed that he was doing it because he was nervous and it was his way of taking control and ownership of the situation. He eventually left by jumping through a bedroom window, through the fly screen, and running off down the street. My brother had a friend sleep over when they were 12. Turns out the kid never had a sleepover before, so he got scared being away from home. Snuck into the kitchen at 2 a.m. and called his parents asking them to pick him up. They picked him up without waking up my parents or my brother, and we woke up scared that this kid just disappeared. Finally we called the parents to admit we lost their kid, and they laughed it off saying they assumed their son had told one of my parents already. Not a guest, but she wanted to kill the devil and run around the garden at 4 a.m. with a knife in hand. She knocked on my door at 5 and said she was done and if I wanted to have breakfast with her. Got their period in my bathtub. Sat in it. Made a sandwich that was apparently 80% condiment. Made out with someone. And then took $90 off my dresser. I wasn't even back from the liquor store yet. Not nearly the weirdest but pretty funny. Had some friends over and I go in the kitchen and one of their friends, just met him, is chopping onions and making quesadillas with my food lol. Just preparing a whole meal without asking LMAO. One night we had a big house party. This drunk chick I had never seen before saw that we had an unopened big carton of goldfish. I was standing nearby when she picked it up and tried putting the whole thing under her shirt. I easily took it from her and she gave me the weirdest look before teeing to convince me she needed them. Clean all the dishes in the sink and generally tidy up the kitchen. Was in the middle of a party and he just started doing it without a word. What kind of psycho just does nice things like that? I was really nervous at a street Patty's party once. Only kind of knew the host. He asked for a little help with the cooking. He wasn't a cook. I ended up taking over and happily putting my attention into serving and making sure people were fed. Saved my introverted ass. Broke the ice with a lot of new people. Introverted psycho probably. Back in college, I lived in a big party house with like 5 guys. One of our longtime party buddies had a bit too much to drink. So we had him laying down and drinking water to sober up. Dude gets up, drops his pants and starts pissing all over an area rug we had. When one of my roommates went to stop him, he went ballistic and Jean-Claude style kicked a hole in the wall before storming out and disappearing into the night. Luckily, we had already confiscated his keys so he couldn't drive. Came back a few days later with his head hanging. Paid for a new rug and fixed the wall. Never happened again. I gave my 13-years-old niece an ice cream cone, drumsticks, with the waffle cone and chocolate-dipped peanut toppings. It was the last one in the freezer. Sometime later I went in the bathroom and there it was in the toilet with no bites. I asked her if she didn't like the cone. She could have just said, no, when I offered it. Or to just throw it in the trash. When confronted, she vehemently denied throwing the whole cone in the toilet. I wasn't upset other than the fact she lied about it. I was very patient at first and really didn't care if she didn't like it. This happened a couple days ago. And her mom, my sister, won't return my calls after receiving a scathing voicemail that I was a bully and a horrible person. She's normally a good kid. And I wasn't really mad. But somehow this seemed like bizarre behavior and I have no skills on how to handle 13-years-old girls. I had a party where someone took the springy bar that holds the toilet paper roll. It was weird because the bar was metallic bronze that matched the rest of the standing TP roll dispenser. Now it has a generic white plastic bar. I found a guest opening every drawer in my room and snooping around my clothes. Not for stealing, just snooping and admitting it while thinking it's normal. I never left the door of my room not locked with guests over again. I had a house party. One of the people I invited asked if they could bring someone I had never met. I was like, yeah, whatever. This random stranger ended up eating the rest lasagna my mom had made for me, which was like 4 pieces, aka 4 dinners. I was so fucking pissed. Never hosted a party ever again. My uncle grabbed his adult children, their spouses. Went into my office without asking. closed the door and had an intense family meeting about some stupid complaint he had. All during my husband's birthday party. Like WTF. You can't just claim a room in my house to start dealing with your family issues. Do that in your own home.